You ever hear something so chilling from the mouth of a child that your bones go cold? That's what happened to me the night my granddaughter crawled into my lap and whispered, "Grandma, Mommy told me you won't live past tomorrow." The room seemed to freeze, like the air itself stopped moving. I remember the way the lamp beside my armchair flickered, the way the shadows seemed to stretch across the walls like they wanted to listen to her words. I thought I misheard her at first, thought maybe she was talking in her sleep or repeating a nightmare. But when I looked into her eyes, those wide, innocent eyes that had never lied to me a day in her short life, I knew this was no dream. Hello, beautiful people. You made it here for a reason, so don't stop now. Hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to see how far this story of revenge will travel. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears, and every memory of my daughter, her strange behavior, her cold stares, her whispered phone calls in the dead of night, came rushing back like a flood I had been holding back for years. I felt my chest tighten as though the truth was pressing its weight on me, daring me to ask, daring me to confirm. And as my granddaughter's tears soaked into the sleeve of my nightgown, I realized this was no child's confusion. This was a warning, a prophecy, a death sentence spoken into existence by the lips of my own flesh and blood. I didn't sleep after that. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her words echoing in my head. "You won't live past tomorrow." I sat upright in my armchair all night, the Bible open on my lap, my glasses sliding down my nose, but my eyes too restless to read a single verse. My house, usually a comfort filled with the scent of lavender and old books, suddenly felt like a coffin. The creaks in the wooden floorboards seemed louder. The hum of the refrigerator turned sinister. I kept hearing faint footsteps where no one should be walking, and then there was the silence of my daughter's room. My daughter, Aisha, had moved back in with me 6 months ago after her second divorce. At first, I thought it was a blessing to have her and little Alani under my roof again. I thought God had given me a second chance to help her rebuild her life. But the more the months passed, the more I noticed the shadows under her eyes, the way her smile never reached her lips, the way she locked her phone with codes and whispered at night like she was making deals with the devil himself. That night, when my granddaughter spoke, it all clicked. Aisha had been planning something that involved me not waking up to see another sunrise. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. After all, what mother in her right mind would harm her own mother? What daughter would poison the very hands that once fed her, held her through her nightmares, and prayed over her sickbed? But then I remembered the nights she left the house in the middle of the storm, dressed too fine for grocery runs. I remembered the whispers I caught through the thin walls. "Don't worry, she won't be a problem much longer." I remembered the night she asked me if I'd updated my will. Her voice sugar-sweet, but her eyes dark with calculation. It all swirled together now, like a puzzle snapping into place with a picture I didn't want to see. Fear sat heavy on my chest, but beneath it, anger began to burn. Anger that my own child could sit at my table, eat my food, tuck her daughter into my guest bedroom, and still plot to end me. I looked at the hallway clock. It was almost 3 a.m. The house was still, but my soul wasn't. If tomorrow was supposed to be my last day, then tonight I was going to find out the truth. The first thing I did was tiptoe to the kitchen. My old bones creaked, but I moved like a thief, careful not to make a sound. I pulled out the medicine bottles on the counter, my blood pressure pills, my pain relievers, even the vitamins I kept by the sink. My hands shook as I unscrewed each cap, pouring a little into my palm, examining them under the weak kitchen light. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but then, in the amber bottle of my heart medication, I noticed one pill that looked off, slightly bigger, a different shade, almost identical but not quite. My chest tightened. It wasn't the kind of mistake a pharmacy makes. It was the kind of switch someone makes when they want you gone quietly, without fuss, without blood. My throat went dry. Was this it? Was this how she planned to take me out, slipping poison where healing should be? I dropped the pill back in and nearly screamed at the sound of it clicking against the others. My ears strained, terrified that Aisha might have heard me. But the house stayed silent. The kind of silence that made your skin crawl. I knew then, if I wanted answers, I had to look deeper. I carried the bottles back to my room and locked the door behind me. My fingers trembled as I dialed Pastor Williams on the old landline I kept by the bed. He was a light sleeper, and sure enough, he answered groggily after 2 rings. "Mother Johnson, is everything all right?" I swallowed hard, my voice barely steady. "Pastor, I need prayer. And I need wisdom. My granddaughter told me something tonight, something that makes me believe my own daughter wants me dead." He went quiet, and for a moment I thought the line had dropped. But then he spoke slowly, carefully. "Do not confront her yet. Stay alert. The Lord reveals what's done in the dark. Watch and pray, Mother." His words calmed me just enough to keep breathing, but my heart was still racing. I looked at Alani, curled up asleep in the small bed beside mine, her tiny chest rising and falling in peace. How could innocence be born from betrayal? How could a mother so pure-hearted raise a daughter who would plot evil? I sat there until dawn, eyes wide open, the bottles of pills on my nightstand, and one haunting thought circling my mind like a vulture. Tomorrow, if I do nothing, will be my last day alive. When the first light of dawn slipped through my curtains, it wasn't the warmth of the sun that woke me, but the gnawing fear that time was running out. The clock struck 6, and the house began to stir. I heard the creak of Aisha's door opening, her footsteps padding down the hall, the faint shuffle of her slippers. I froze, pretending to be asleep as she passed my room. She paused outside my door for just a moment too long, as if listening, as if waiting. My heart hammered against my chest. Then she moved on, heading to the kitchen. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Alani, and pressed my ear against the door. I heard the clinking of dishes, the running faucet, and then silence. It wasn't the normal kind of silence, though. It was a loaded quiet, like she was doing something she didn't want anyone to hear. I tiptoed closer, peeking through the crack in the hallway. There she was, standing at the stove, pouring something from a small vial into the steaming pot of oatmeal she always insisted on making for me. My stomach lurched. She wasn't just planning to slip something into my medicine. She was lacing my breakfast, too. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was deliberate, calculated, cold. And I knew if I ate that oatmeal, my granddaughter's chilling words would come true before the day was over. I pulled back from the door, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My mind raced through 100 different plans. Call the police, confront her, pretend to eat, and secretly discard the food. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, if I went to the authorities with nothing but suspicions, they would see me as an old woman chasing ghosts. If I confronted Aisha outright, she would deny it, twist the truth, maybe even turn Alani against me. No, I needed proof, cold, undeniable proof that even the devil himself couldn't explain away. I walked quietly back into my room and opened the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed. Inside was my late husband's camcorder, the kind he used to record birthdays and church events. It was old, but it still worked. I charged it with trembling hands, knowing what I had to do. Today, I would let Aisha play her hand. I would pretend ignorance, pretend weakness, pretend to swallow her poison, while the camera, hidden behind the bookshelf, captured everything. The thought made my blood run hot, with both fear and determination. If she wanted to end me, she would not only fail, she would reveal herself for the whole world to see. At breakfast, I sat at the table with Alani, who hummed softly as she stirred her cereal. Aisha placed a steaming bowl of oatmeal in front of me, her smile stretched too wide, her eyes glittering with something I couldn't name. "Eat up, Mama," she said sweetly. "You need your strength." I forced my lips into a grateful smile, masking the dread in my stomach. My hand trembled as I lifted the spoon, dipping it into the thick oatmeal. The smell alone made me want to gag, knowing what she had poured into it just an hour earlier. But I didn't flinch. I raised the spoon, held it close to my mouth, then, with the grace of a seasoned actress, let the contents slip back into the bowl unnoticed. I repeated the act 2 more times, pretending to chew and swallow, while Aisha's eyes never left me. She studied every movement, every swallow, like a predator watching her prey. I gave her what she wanted to see, a frail old woman, too trusting to know betrayal was simmering in her bowl. Inside, though, my mind was steel. I had positioned the camcorder perfectly before breakfast, angled just so, capturing her slipping the vial into my food. Every flicker of her deceit, every twitch of her calculating smile, was now on tape. After breakfast, I excused myself, claiming fatigue, and returned to my room. I locked the door, slid to the floor, and let the sobs escape. Not just because my daughter had tried to kill me, but because of the unbearable grief that the same womb I once prayed over, the same little girl I once carried on my back, was now plotting to bury me. The betrayal burned, but beneath the pain, there was a strange clarity. Evil rarely announces itself with horns and fire. It comes dressed as love, cloaked in smiles, sitting at your own table. I wiped my tears and gathered myself. I had the evidence, but I needed more. Aisha was smart, too smart. If I confronted her with one recording, she might destroy it or spin the story. I had to let her think she was winning, let her feel triumphant, until the mask fully slipped and the monster showed its face. That night, I decided I would not sleep. I would wait, just as Alani's haunting words had told me to, and I would uncover the full depth of whatever plan my daughter had wrapped around me like a spider's web. Night fell heavy on the house. The crickets outside chirped in eerie unison, and the wind rattled the old shutters like skeletal fingers tapping against glass. I sat upright in bed, the camcorder battery fully charged, my ears tuned to every creak and whisper. Around midnight, I heard her door open again. Her footsteps were slower this time, deliberate, as if she didn't want to wake anyone. My heart pounded as she moved toward my room. The doorknob turned slightly, testing if it was locked. Finding it secure, she lingered outside for a moment, then padded away. I waited, listening. 15 minutes later, the smell hit me, faint but sharp, seeping under the crack of my door. Gasoline. My chest clenched with horror. This wasn't just about slipping poison into my pills or lacing my breakfast. She had escalated. She wanted to burn the house down, with me in it. With her own daughter asleep in the next room. My mind reeled. What kind of darkness had taken hold of her heart? I grabbed the camcorder, crept to the window, and with shaking hands, recorded as she walked around the porch, pouring liquid from a red canister onto the wooden planks. The flames of betrayal had never been more literal. I pressed my trembling hand against the window pane, my breath fogging up the glass as I watched Aisha circle the porch like a woman possessed. She poured the gasoline with a steady hand, her face blank, her movements almost mechanical. It wasn't the face of the little girl who used to braid my hair on Sunday afternoons, nor the teenager who cried when she didn't get into her first-choice college. This was someone else entirely, someone colder, darker, unreachable. My hands clutched the camcorder tighter, capturing every drop she spilled onto the wooden boards, every flicker of madness in her eyes. I knew I had enough evidence now to damn her for life, but I also knew the fire in her heart wasn't going to stop until it consumed me. She vanished into the shadows of the backyard, and I stumbled back from the window, my knees weak, my body trembling from fear and grief. I pressed my palms together and prayed aloud, tears streaming down my cheeks. Lord, give me strength. Do not let me fall into the trap my own child has set. But deep inside, another thought clawed at me, sharp and unbearable. What had I done, or failed to do, that could raise a daughter who wanted me dead? The night stretched long, every tick of the clock sounding like a countdown to my execution. Around 2 a.m., I heard her bedroom door slam shut. I knew she was done for the night, her plan delayed until morning. I slumped back into my chair, exhausted but determined. That was when I remembered something, a memory that now felt like a clue I had ignored too long. 2 weeks ago, I had overheard Aisha on the phone, whispering to someone late at night. I hadn't caught much, only fragments. Insurance, double payout, once she's gone. At the time, I had brushed it off, thinking maybe she was gossiping or helping a friend. But now the words came back sharp, cutting into me like knives. Insurance, payout, gone. My stomach twisted with realization. It wasn't just hatred or madness. It was money. My daughter had reduced me, her mother, to a dollar figure. My life was a policy, a check she could cash once the obituary was written. I pressed a hand to my chest, choking back a sob. Love had been replaced by greed, family replaced by fortune. And the worst part? She had been patient, calculating, waiting for the perfect time to strike. The morning sun rose heavy and mocking, as though it knew I had barely survived the night. Alani's laughter was the only sound that kept me from collapsing into despair. She ran into my room, her little curls bouncing, her arms wrapping tight around my waist. "Grandma, are you okay?" she asked with a seriousness too old for her 6 years. I forced a smile, smoothing her hair. "I'm fine, baby," I lied. "Grandma's just tired." Aisha appeared moments later, holding a tray with breakfast, her face painted with the mask of a dutiful daughter. But now I could see the cracks in the mask, how her smile twitched, how her eyes flickered with something darker when she thought I wasn't looking. She set the tray down on my nightstand, oatmeal again, steaming and sweet. I pretended not to notice, my hand steady as I reached for the bowl. Inside, though, my mind was screaming. The camcorder was hidden under my pillow, recording everything. Every poisoned spoonful she offered, every encouraging word dripping with deceit. If I was going to survive this, I had to keep acting, keep pretending, and let her hang herself with her own rope. By noon, I had an entire reel of evidence. Aisha tampering with my food, sneaking outside with gasoline, whispering on her phone about payouts. But evidence alone wasn't enough. If she discovered I was onto her, she might do something reckless, something that would harm not just me, but Alani too. I decided to set a trap. That afternoon, I called Aisha into the living room. "Baby," I said softly, my voice steady though my heart raced. I was thinking, maybe I should update my will, just in case. Life is uncertain. Her eyes lit up for a fraction of a second, a gleam of greed so sharp I almost recoiled. She tried to mask it with a sweet smile. "That's a good idea, Mama. It's best to be prepared." I nodded, hiding my disgust. "I'll need you to come with me tomorrow. We can stop by the lawyer's office." I saw the calculation flash across her face. Tomorrow was too late for her plan. If I made it to that lawyer's office, if I spoke to anyone outside this house, her scheme would crumble. Her lips pressed into a thin line before she forced a smile. Of course, Mama, tomorrow. But I knew what she was thinking. I couldn't live long enough to make it that far. That night, the air was thick with tension. I tucked Alani into bed, kissing her forehead, whispering a prayer over her small body. Then I retreated to my room, the camcorder in position, my heart pounding in anticipation. I didn't have to wait long. Around midnight, the floor creaked, slow and deliberate. My door handle rattled, then clicked as it turned. I froze, clutching the camcorder. Aisha slipped in, a shadow among shadows, holding another vial in her hand. She moved toward my nightstand, unscrewing the cap of my water glass. My pulse thundered as I watched her pour the contents into the water, her movements smooth, practiced, like she had done this 100 times in her mind. She leaned close to me, her breath brushing my cheek as she whispered, "Good night, Mama." Then she slipped out, closing the door behind her. My throat tightened. My daughter had just blessed me with a poison kiss. But what she didn't know was that the camcorder caught it all. The vial, the water, her whispered words. I stared at the glass, the liquid shimmering in the dim light, and I knew the choice was mine. Drink and die, or live and expose her. And for the first time, I felt the power shift. Tomorrow, the predator would become the prey. The morning came heavy with dread, but also with a strange new strength. I had the evidence. Every deceitful act, every vial, every whispered word was now preserved forever on that camcorder. No more guessing. No more fear of being called paranoid. The truth was mine, and it burned in my chest like holy fire. I didn't touch the poisoned water on my nightstand. Instead, I slipped it carefully into a plastic bag, my hands wrapped in gloves from the kitchen. Then I tucked the camcorder into my purse, close to my body, like a secret weapon. When I came out to the kitchen, Aisha was already there, her face painted with false cheer. "Morning, Mama," she sang, plating eggs and toast as if she hadn't stood over me hours before, trying to poison me into the grave. I smiled at her, my heart pounding with the effort of pretending. "Morning, baby," I replied softly. "We'll go to the lawyer's office today, right?" She hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Yes, Mama, today." But I could see the flicker in her eyes. She wasn't planning on letting me leave this house alive. I dressed carefully, choosing my Sunday best even though it was a Wednesday. A crisp navy dress, pearl earrings, my church shoes polished until they gleamed. If this was going to be a day of revelation, I wanted to face it with dignity. I tucked Alani's hair into neat braids, kissed her forehead, and told her to stay in the den with her coloring books. "Don't open the door for anyone but Grandma," I whispered, pressing her tiny hands into mine. She nodded solemnly, as if she knew something big was about to happen. Then I joined Aisha in the car, the evidence still hidden in my purse. She smiled as she drove, but her grip on the steering wheel was too tight, her knuckles white, her eyes darting to me like she was measuring my every breath. "You nervous, Mama?" she asked casually. "Updating a will is serious business," I forced a chuckle. "Life is serious business, baby." She laughed too, but it was brittle, empty. As the city blurred past us, I kept my hands folded on my lap, praying silently. "Lord, let me make it through this day. Let the truth be revealed." Instead of driving to the lawyer's office, Aisha took a sudden turn onto a quiet road lined with tall, whispering trees. My stomach tightened. I knew this path. It led not to downtown, but to an abandoned warehouse where kids used to dare each other to sneak in at night. "This isn't the way," I said carefully, my voice calm but firm. Aisha glanced at me, her lips curling into something almost smug. "Shortcut, Mama, don't worry." My pulse raced, but I kept my face steady. I clutched my purse tighter, feeling the camcorder against my side like a shield. The car rolled to a stop in front of the warehouse, the windows dark, the doors rusted. Aisha turned to me, her eyes cold, her smile gone. "You know, Mama," she said softly, almost lovingly, "sometimes it's better to handle things privately, less messy." My heart pounded so loud I thought she could hear it, but I met her gaze without flinching. "You're right, baby," I whispered. "Today is the day to handle things." I reached into my purse, not for defense, but for the camcorder. The red light blinked, alive, capturing her every word. Her face changed instantly when she saw the camera. The mask slipped. The sweetness drained away, replaced by raw fury. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her voice sharp as glass. "You think anyone will believe you? You think they'll side with you over me?" I held the camcorder steady, my hand surprisingly strong. "I don't think, Aisha. I know. I have everything. The pills, the oatmeal, the gasoline, the water. Every lie you tried to feed me. It's all here." Her eyes darted to the bag with the water bottle, to the purse, to me. Panic flickered across her face, but only for a second before she leaned back, crossing her arms like a queen unbothered. "You always did love playing the victim, Mama. Maybe people will believe you. Or maybe they'll think you're just a bitter old woman trying to ruin her daughter's life." I stared at her, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "No, baby. I'm a mother who gave you life. And you tried to take mine. That's something no one will forgive." The silence between us was thick, a battlefield where neither side wanted to make the first move. I knew I couldn't walk away from that warehouse without making a choice. Either I confronted her fully and risked her rage, or I held my tongue and let her think she still had a chance to win. I chose the middle path. I lowered the camcorder slowly, slipping it back into my purse, but not before she saw the determination in my eyes. "Drive me home," I said calmly. "We'll talk about this later." For a moment I thought she might lunge at me, snatch the purse, end it all right there, but something in my voice must have unsettled her. She turned the key, the engine roared to life, and we drove back in tense silence. Every mile stretched like eternity. When we pulled into the driveway, I didn't wait for her to open the door. I stepped out, clutching my purse, and walked straight into the house. I locked myself in my room, my hands shaking as I set the camcorder on the nightstand. The evidence was safe. But I knew Aisha wouldn't stop. Not until she got what she wanted. I knelt by my bed, tears falling freely as I prayed. "Lord, if tomorrow was supposed to be my last day, then let me live long enough to protect this child. Let me live long enough to bring the truth to light." The next morning, I woke with a pounding headache, not from sickness, but from the weight of secrets pressing down on me. The house was eerily quiet. Aisha had already left for errands, and little Alani was still fast asleep in her room. I took the chance to act. I slipped the camcorder into a larger tote bag, along with the plastic bag containing my poisoned water glass and the bottle of pills with the swapped capsules. My heart raced as I stepped out into the cool morning air, locking the door behind me. The walk to the police station was only 6 blocks, but every step felt like I was dragging chains behind me. I expected Aisha's car to pull up any minute, her window rolling down with a smile hiding a knife. But the road stayed empty. When I reached the station, I clutched my tote bag like it was life itself. Inside, the officer at the desk raised an eyebrow. "Can I help you, ma'am?" My voice quivered but stayed clear. "Yes, my name is Evelyn Johnson, and I have proof my daughter is trying to kill me." The young officer blinked, taken aback, but he didn't laugh or brush me off like I feared. Instead, he gestured for me to sit. I pulled out the camcorder and pressed play. The room filled with the grainy footage of Aisha pouring a vial into my oatmeal, of her whispering over my bed, of her circling the porch with gasoline. The officer's jaw tightened. "Jesus," he muttered under his breath. He called his supervisor immediately, and within minutes, 2 detectives were sitting across from me, watching the evidence with grim faces. One leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "Mrs. Johnson, this is serious. Your daughter could be facing multiple charges: attempted murder, arson, insurance fraud. We'll need to act quickly, but we also need your cooperation. Are you safe returning home?" My hands trembled as I clutched the purse strap. "No," I whispered. "I don't think I'll ever be safe as long as she knows I'm alive." The detective nodded. "We'll handle it, but for this to stick, we'll need to catch her in the act, with no doubt left for a jury." My stomach turned. It meant going back into the lion's den, back into the house of betrayal, with my predator still circling. When I returned home later that afternoon, my hands still shaking from the police station, I found Aisha sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee like any normal daughter would. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Where were you, Mama?" she asked smoothly, though suspicion laced her tone. I forced a tired smile, placing the tote bag by my chair. "Went for a walk. Needed some fresh air." She studied me for a long moment, then shrugged. "Well, next time, let me know. I worry about you." The hypocrisy almost made me choke, but I kept my composure, knowing the detectives were now watching. They had given me a small recording device hidden inside my pocket, and another officer would be parked down the street, waiting. I sat at the table, hands folded, pretending to chat about the weather while my daughter's eyes searched me like she knew I was hiding something. In that moment, I realized the game had shifted. I wasn't just a mother fighting for survival anymore. I was bait in a trap, luring the wolf into exposing herself fully. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house grew quiet, I felt the shift in the air again. Aisha moved around the kitchen, humming under her breath, her voice sweet but laced with menace. She called out, "Mama, I made you some tea. Good for your nerves." My throat tightened. Tea. Another opportunity. Another chance for her to lace comfort with poison. I walked slowly to the living room, letting her set the steaming cup on the table in front of me. "Thank you, baby," I said softly, lowering myself into the chair. She hovered nearby, watching, waiting. My hand trembled as I reached for the cup, bringing it close to my lips. But instead of drinking, I set it back down and looked straight into her eyes. "Aisha," I said quietly, "why do you hate me so much?" The question caught her off guard. Her smile faltered, her eyes flickered. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally said, "It's not about hate, Mama. It's about survival. You don't understand what it's like to always live in your shadow, to always come second. You had everything handed to you, and me? I've had to fight for scraps. This insurance money? It's the first time in my life I'll finally be free." Her words sliced deeper than any poison ever could. I stared at her, my chest tight, my eyes stinging with tears. "Free?" I whispered. "By killing your own mother? By leaving your child motherless?" Aisha's jaw clenched, her face hardening. "Alani will be fine. She'll grow up strong, maybe stronger without you coddling her. You think you're the saint in this story, Mama? But you don't see what it's like to always be less. Less than you. Less than your perfect church life. Less than the example you set that I could never live up to. Do you know what it's like to feel invisible in your own family?" Her voice cracked, but her eyes stayed sharp, unyielding. I felt my whole body trembling, not just from fear, but from the heartbreak of realizing that my daughter's betrayal wasn't only greed. It was years of festering bitterness, of envy that had grown into hatred. I leaned forward, my voice breaking. "Baby, I would have given you the world if you had just asked. I would have given you everything." She shook her head, a bitter smile curving her lips. "Not this, Mama. Not your life." And in that moment, I knew the detectives listening outside had heard enough. The truth was out. The wolf had finally bared her teeth. The silence after her confession felt heavier than the walls of that house. I sat frozen, staring at the woman I had raised, the woman I had prayed for, the little girl I once held in my arms, and now she was confessing she wanted me gone. My hand trembled over the armrest of my chair, but inside, I felt a strange calm. The recording device in my pocket was still blinking faintly, capturing every poisonous word she had spoken. I whispered a prayer in my heart. Lord, let this be the end of it. Don't let me fall tonight. But Aisha wasn't finished. She leaned closer, her eyes dark and hollow. Drink the tea, Mama. Don't make this harder than it has to be. My throat went dry. I looked at her, steady and unwavering. No, I said softly, but firmly. The word hung in the air like a stone dropped into a still pond. Her face twisted, fury spilling across it. In that moment, the front door burst open. Detectives stormed in, weapons drawn, voices loud. Police! Don't move! Aisha froze, her hands jerking back from the teacup. For a split second, she looked like a cornered animal, wild and desperate. And I realized the most dangerous moment wasn't over. It was just beginning. The officers moved quickly, but Aisha was quicker. She grabbed the cup of poisoned tea, flinging it toward me in one last desperate attempt. The liquid splashed across the table, seeping into the carpet as I stumbled back, heart pounding. One officer tackled her to the ground, the teacup shattering into pieces, the shards scattering like broken promises. Alani ran into the room at the sound of the commotion, her little eyes wide with terror as she saw her mother pinned down by two detectives. Mommy, she screamed, her voice breaking. My heart tore in two. I scooped her up in my arms, shielding her from the sight, whispering, It's okay, baby. It's okay. Grandma's here. But even as I said it, my chest ached with grief. How do you tell a child that the person she loves most has just tried to destroy the person who loves her second most? How do you explain betrayal like this to innocent ears? The officers read Aisha her rights as she writhed on the floor, her face twisted with rage and humiliation. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just the end of her plan. It was the end of the fragile thread that had tied us together as mother and daughter. They took her away in handcuffs, her head held high as though pride alone could shield her from justice. I sat on the couch with Alani trembling in my arms, the detectives gathering evidence, bagging the poisoned pills, the shattered teacup, the vials hidden in the kitchen. One detective crouched in front of me, his voice low and gentle. Mrs. Johnson, you saved your own life today. Without this evidence, it might have been too late. I nodded, but tears rolled down my cheeks. Save my life? Yes. But what about my daughter's soul? What about the little girl who once sang hymns beside me in church? Who once pressed daisies into my hands and said, These are for you, Mama? Where had that child gone? I looked down at Alani, her eyes searching mine, silently begging for answers I couldn't give. Grandma, she whispered, is Mommy bad? My throat tightened, my words caught in my chest. No, baby, I said finally, kissing her hair. Mommy is lost, but we're going to pray that one day she finds her way back. I held her tighter, silently wondering if some roads, once chosen, can ever truly lead back home. The days that followed were a blur of reporters at the door, neighbors whispering in disbelief, church members calling with prayers and tears. Everyone wanted to know how the respectable Evelyn Johnson had ended up the target of her own daughter's betrayal. I answered politely, but inside, I was weary. The evidence was turned over to the courts, the trial date set, and the insurance scheme exposed in full. Aisha had taken out not one, but 3 policies in my name, each promising a fortune if I died unexpectedly. It was greed dressed as ambition, jealousy cloaked as necessity. At night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the empty bed across from mine, where Alani used to fall asleep beside her mother. The silence was louder than any scream. I prayed harder than I ever had, asking God for strength, for wisdom, for healing. But I also prayed for Aisha, because even though she had raised her hand against me, even though she had tried to snuff out my light, she was still my child. And a mother's love is a stubborn thing. It refuses to die, even when it should. Weeks later, I sat in the courtroom, the weight of it all pressing down on my shoulders. Aisha stood before the judge, her hands shackled, her eyes still burning with pride, but her face thinner, harder. The prosecutor laid out the evidence, my camcorder footage, playing on the screen for the jury to see. Gasoline on the porch, poison in the pills. A whispered goodnight, laced with death. The jurors gasped. The courtroom buzzed with shock. I sat silently, clutching Alani's hand. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, my voice trembling but clear. Your Honor, I am not here for vengeance. I am here for truth. My daughter tried to take my life, but she is still my daughter. I ask for justice, but I also ask for mercy. Because one day, this little girl, I said, squeezing Alani's hand, will ask me why her mother isn't here. And I want to be able to say that even when her mother did wrong, someone still believed she could find her way back. The courtroom fell silent. The judge nodded solemnly. And as I sat down, I felt a strange peace wash over me. My granddaughter's words had almost come true, but instead of my death, they led me to discover a terrifying truth that saved my life. And though my heart bore scars I would carry forever, I knew this much: evil cannot hide forever. In time, light will always break through the dark. And that was my story. If it moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it.